Each time our cells divide, something really, really interesting begins to happen, among the many interesting things that happen, within the chromosomes themselves. In an earlier episode, I described how the tip of every chromosome, the DNA at the tip of every chromosome, has a special component called a telomere at the end. And I didn't talk a lot about those telomeres then because I knew I would right now. A telomere you can think of in just the way you would think of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes. Okay, if you look at the ends of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes, they typically have a little plastic cap over the end that keeps them from fraying and makes it possible for you to lace them through the eyes on your shoes. Well, the ends of your DNA, your telomeres, are the equivalent of those little plastic caps. And every time your cell divides, the chromosomes in the division process, they are incapable of completing division all the way to the end of the DNA. So what that means is, with each cell division, a little piece of the DNA breaks off. It's brittle, it breaks away, and it's lost. That is what the telomeres do. They are the buffer so that what breaks off is the telomere and not the information in the DNA itself. So, when one cell divides into two, you lose a little bit of telomeres in the end. That's okay, you've got a lot left. Two divide into four, you lose a little bit more. You've got a lot left, but not as much as you did before. And you see where this is going. It goes on for a finite period of time until we reach a point where the telomere is so short or it is so weak it can no longer protect the rest of the DNA. And when your cell reaches that point, we call it senescence, we call it old age, and eventually we call it death. Because the cell cannot preserve the information, the DNA cannot preserve the information, and because of that, it won't allow itself to divide with bad information. All right, so that's the mechanism. Telomere shortening, it's directly linked to stress in our lives. And I want to say this to you directly. I'm going to read directly from the scientific document, so you know it's not my opinion. I want you to hear exactly what it is they're saying about this. In the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the title of this research article, it tells the whole story. Listen to the title. Accelerated Telomere Shortening in Response to Life Stress. What they're saying is chronic stress erodes the telomeres, it impairs the DNA replication, and it accelerates the aging. So this is peer-reviewed science saying in open paper what we're talking about right now. It is the stress of life. It can come from many places. It can come from the job, it can come from work, it can be emotional stress, it can be environmental stress, it can be psychological stress, it can be a healing crisis. There are all kinds of stress. So it's not the stress, it's about how we interpret and how we deal with that stress. When we are born, we have a very high complement of telomeres. What scientists tell us is when we're born, we have about 8,000 base pairs of telomeres to begin with. By the time we're in our 30s, we have maybe half of that number, and by the time we're in our 60s, we have maybe about a third of that number, typically. But the good news is all that can change, and you can direct how it changes in your life. The lifetime of a telomere and the lifetime of a cell are generally accepted to be about 40 to 60 cell divisions. So 40 to 60 cell divisions is generally the lifetime of an average cell, and this is what scientists tell us. It is the limit of that lifetime. And the limit actually has a name. It's named after the man that discovered the limit. It is called the Hayflick limit. Hayflick limit. That is the number of times. The Hayflick limit defines how many times our cells can divide before they reach the point where the telomeres aren't working any longer. Interestingly, that Hayflick limit equates, if you take that number of cell divisions and how long they live, that equates to about 120 years of human life. So we're beginning to see why we do see people living up to 120 years. We don't see a lot after that because they have reached this Hayflick limit. The question is, can we increase that Hayflick limit? Are we bound to that limit? And the answer is yes, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the discovery in 2009 tells us why it's possible. In 2009, the Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology was awarded to three people, to Carol Greider, Elizabeth Blackburn, and Jack Szostak. They all worked together to discover an enzyme in the human body. Now think about this. This is 2009. That was just a few years ago. And they're still discovering things about the human body that we haven't known in the past. This new enzyme was mysterious at first. They found the enzyme. They weren't sure what the function was. But the only place they found the enzyme was hovering near the end of the telomeres. So they theorized maybe this enzyme has something to do with the telomeres, and if it does, maybe the enzyme has something to do with long life. So their discovery of this enzyme is what the Nobel Prize was awarded for. The name of the enzyme tells the whole story. It gives it away. Okay, the telomeres are what determine how long the cell can live and divide. The enzyme they discovered is called telomerase. And the purpose of this enzyme, the only purpose of the telomerase in our bodies, is to heal and repair the telomeres at the end of our DNA. The thing is, often our telomerase is not actively engaged in its greatest potential. It's dormant, or if not completely dormant, it is not as active as it can be. Well, what scientists found after they discovered the telomeres, they began looking into the function of the telomeres and the telomerase working together. And once again, not my words, I want to share with you the exact words of what it is that they found. The National Institutes of Health produced a series of articles in the year 2011. And I'm just going to share with you two direct sentences from that. Number one, they're saying that the telomeres shorten with age. They say telomere length shortens with age. That is a fact. Okay, the next sentence is the key, because they say the rate of telomere shortening can be either increased or decreased by specific lifestyle factors. What that means is that you and I have the ability to make choices in our lives that will either accelerate the aging process, in essence, old age and death, or we make lifestyle choices that breathe life and activate these anti-aging hormones and the telomerase in our bodies. And some of these factors you already know. Of course, diet, exercise, lifestyle, you know about those things. But there's another factor now that you already know, but you may not realize is impacting the duration of your cell life. And that is the technique of heart-brain harmony that we just learned in the last episode.